Well, joining us now is the American political commentator, Steve Gill. Good to see you, Steve, or see you in a second. He's coming. Good morning, Steve. Listen, I believe that the sort of MAGA, Make America Great Again wing of the Republican Party makes up about a third of it. They won't be bothered by this finding. But what about the rest of the party? Will this hurt his chances of a nomination or indeed of winning the presidency again?
I don't think it hurts his nomination because, as you mentioned, the Make America Great Again portion of the Republican primary is solidly in his favor. I think the other case against him in New York that is such a persecution witch hunt about documents and recording documents by a partisan DA and a partisan judge in Manhattan, that's already boosted his primary election and his general election numbers. He's gotten his poll numbers, gotten a bump. This one, I think, does have a different result, although the result was a bit bizarre, as already pointed out. On one hand, the jury found that she was not raped, even though she specifically claimed she was raped, and then tagged Donald Trump with defamation funds and penalized him for that, for saying he didn't rape her. So the jury said she didn't get raped, but we're going to charge Donald Trump for saying she didn't get raped. So it's a little bit of a bizarre result, but I do think it hurts him in the general election because he's already weak with suburban women voters among one of the demographics. And I don't think this helps him there. It may not hurt him horribly, but he was already doing poorly with suburban women, and I don't think this helps him there at all.
Stephen, why is he so strong with his own woman then, his wife? I mean, this would finish a politician in the UK. This would just absolutely finish. There's a number of other things. The famous tape where he described grabbing a woman, that would have finished any politician in the UK. But so he goes on. But I sit here and I just genuinely scratch my head. Why does Melania stay with him?
You know, I think, first of all, she's very loyal, and she knows him better than sort of the media presentation of who he is. It is interesting that Access Hollywood tape was allowed to be played for the jury, and that other women testifying that he had treated them roughly in some cases. That's the kind of stuff that normally doesn't get presented before a jury, and that may give him an avenue for an appeal, because the Access Hollywood tape had nothing to do with this particular case. Also, in this case, you didn't have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt like you do in a criminal case. It was a preponderance of the evidence, so you just kind of had to get over that halfway hurdle. But the judge let in testimony and evidence that would not normally be given even in a civil case, much less a criminal case, and that may give him the opportunity for an appeal. But I think that Melania has stuck with him. She knows him. I think she doesn't believe some of the women who come out of the woodwork making these claims, some of whom could not believe because the facts just weren't there. And in this case, it was a 30-year-old case. The lady couldn't testify as to what year it happened, much less what month. There were no witnesses. There was no evidence. And yet again, in a city of Manhattan, New York City, that 85% of the people there voted against him. Not surprising that a liberal Democrat judge and a liberal Democrat base of jurors found against Donald Trump, again, despite the fact that they rejected her very specific claim that she was raped, and then still found him guilty of defamation for saying the same thing that the jury did. She didn't get raped.
Steve, let me ask you, man to man, does this change your opinion? Does this change your opinion of him? I mean, and speaking for a lot of blokes out there, I mean, does this make you run to the hills? Does this make you distance him? Or does this make you think, well, it's what you'd expect. It's Donald, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not going to scratch my nose when I say this, but I think it does raise, issues of his attitude, his blustery kind of, bull in a china shop sort of approach to things has done damage to him. I think it's one of the reasons that Republicans didn't fare better in the midterm elections. They like his policies. We like his policies. It's his personality that causes trouble. And again, I don't think this helps him. It may not hurt him because among that base of female voters, he was already faring poorly. But it's definitely not going to give him a boost. And I think you're right. Even among men, it makes you be a little squeamish about the behavior that he's exhibited towards women, not just in this case. Although I will say in that Access Hollywood tape, he was saying that his celebrities have a lot more sway, that women throw themselves at him and at celebrities, and that's certainly true. But, man, it was such a garish way to present it that I think that certainly carried weight with the jury in this case, that it shows an attitude towards women that none of us should embrace.
I don't know if the Access Hollywood case said that stars threw themselves at him. I mean, the transcript says, "I don't even wait. When you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything. Grab them by the ... You can do anything." I mean, look, I accept it makes you feel squeamish. And I just feel sorry for the wing of the Republican Party, many of whom are very religious people, conservative people, you know, morally do-gooders, who have to contend with this man who's, quite frankly, whether you accept the ruling of the court in this case, just from a number of things that have happened in his past, morally dubious. It's unfortunate, don't you think? It's the best they can come up with.
Yeah, and it harkens back to Bill Clinton when he was president and the behavior that he exhibited, and yet he kept getting reelected despite, you know, aggressive, egregious behavior towards women. And people would ask, would you want him to be your daughter's high school principal? And the answer was, of course, no. And I'd say the same thing about Donald Trump. You wouldn't want him to be your daughter's high school principal, yeah. But people were willing to look that aside and reelect Clinton because of the economy. And they may be willing to reelect President Trump again over Biden because of the U.S. economy and the failures of international diplomacy and other failures. Our border is awash with illegal aliens pouring across. It may be enough to elect him because of policy, but man, you're exactly right. The personality stuff is a tough pill to swallow.
Just finally, you know, the comparisons with Joe Biden, Sleepy Joe, lots of people saying is he the best the Democrats can come up with. People also talking about the sort of legal stuff surrounding his son and the sort of business details that were found on his laptop. Is that also a disappointment to the Democrats that that's the best that they can come up with?
Well, especially when Joe Biden this week said that his son has done nothing wrong, and yet we have the laptop showing him cavorting with prostitutes, underage prostitutes, using drugs. It's bizarre that the president would let him travel around the world with him and at the same time say he's done nothing wrong. He's the smartest man I know. It makes you question his judgment on a whole lot of other issues.
Well, those are allegations we should stress, yeah.
Biden may be the only guy who can beat Trump, and Trump may be the only guy who can beat Biden. I think both parties can probably do better, and that's why a lot of folks would like to see Ron DeSantis as the Republican nominee and would like to see an anybody but Biden nominee on the Democratic side. At this point, I think we're stuck with those two going head-to-head again in America in 2020.
Well, thanks for shining light on that, Steve. Very, very interesting comparisons there. Steve Gill's an American political commentator. We appreciate your time, sir. Thank you very much indeed.